Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's banger. Okay, so today in this video, for this about 15 to 20 minutes, I'm just going to be spitting straight sauce. Okay, I'm going to be covering a case study of mine, one of my clients, exactly how we got them to 78k in 3 months, how we generated them 70k, 78k cash contracted in 3 months, and we're going to be touching three main topics, okay? Three main bases of how we were actually able to do that. And I'm going to be going through to into each of these main bases, okay? Each of these main topics, explaining kind of my thought process behind it, exactly how I did it, how we did it, how we were able to engineer them success, and how we were able to just stack tons of cash in such a short amount of time in 90 days. 78k in 90 days, it's not bad, you know what I mean? It's pretty good. A lot of businesses do this in a year. So, without further ado, we're literally just going to jump straight into it. I think number one, okay, if you're familiar with my page, you could have guessed this was coming up, okay? Sales. Hands down sales. Sales is my thing, sales is my bread and butter. Sales is what I come into businesses and help them with time after time after again. It's what I'm a leader at and it's what I'm great at, okay? With this fitness business coaching client, I was helping them with sales, management, and closing, okay? I will go into sales right now. With their sales, with their whole sales process, I literally came in and built out with their whole sales process. We literally came in and built out their whole team from scratch, okay? From setters to SDRs to closers. We came in, built their whole team from scratch, and I'm gonna walk you through a little bit how I did that, okay? First of all, you just got the hiring. In order to have the team, you have to hire the talent. You have to find VA players to work for the business, right? And that's exactly what we did, okay? We came in, I sourced, from my pool, from my hiring pool, from my network. I sourced players that I knew were going to crush it for the business. First things first, it was setters. Okay, setters. Love setters. I was a setter myself, so I already had some setters in the back of my mind. They had one or two setters that I was already working for them, so I was like, all right, cool, we can use these guys. They're doing a decent job already. Came in, sourced out the setters as soon as possible. That was the first thing I sourced when I started building out the team, okay? As when you're running a business, when you're trying to build a successful business, the most important thing is the appointments getting booked. It doesn't matter how good your closing rate is. Um, if there's no appointments, there's nothing to close, right? So I knew from the jump, as soon as we got in, setters needs to be our main priority, as that's really what's going to actually get us to the closing rate we need to get to. Okay, built up the setter team. Then I built up the SDRs. Once I had the DM setters dialed in, once I had them hired and selected and trained, we went straight to the SDRs. The SDRs, their role was literally calling the leads. We had lead lists. We also had ads. We had different funnels pumping out different ads. We had a school funnel, funneling them through school from the 0 to 1k to their main high ticket paid program. We also had lead magnet funnels, lead magnet ads. We had Instagram follower ads. We had a range of different funnels we were testing, and it meant that we were also collecting a lot of numbers. Okay, so with the numbers that we were collecting, we had SDRs call them. The setters, they were good for the DMs, but we also needed someone on the dials dialing these leads every day, making sure that we're booking calls through the phone. As if used effectively, the phone can be such a gift. The phone can be such a tool. Okay, so we had SDRs calling the leads, booking anywhere from 20 to 30 calls per month, which is pretty solid. With a great closing rate from that. Also, just creating all of the infrastructures again. So obviously, after the hiring, we hired the setters, hired the SDRs. Now it's time to hire the closers. Okay, now we've got appointments being booked. Let's actually get these closed now. You can't hire a closer first without hiring the setters, hiring the appointments to be booked, because the closer will leave if there's no calls in the calendar. The closer will leave, the closer will churn. So we need to make sure that we've got the setters first booking the appointments, and then we can focus on the closing, okay? Hired the closer. As soon as I had finished hiring the three main guys, the three main players, obviously there were multiple setters, multiple closers, multiple SDRs. As soon as I'd hired a bulk of the team, Now it's time to start creating everything. Okay, it's time to actually start creating the infrastructures for the setters, for the sales reps, and just for the business, so the business can run. And that comes down to, team communications, team comms, okay, booked calls automations, visualizing everything like you can see here, OHB book calls, visualizing everything, creating things like this so that you've constantly got that feedback loop. Okay, and instead of having to ask for reps every day or wait until the daily report, you can literally just go into the booked calls chat and see how many calls were booked today, who were they booked by, who's the closer. You know what I mean? Having all of this automated was amazing. So created the infrastructures to do with the booked calls for automations, and then we also created the infrastructures to actually train the sales team. Okay, so you can see here we've got screenshots of all of the SOPs and all of the training, creating trainings and SOPs. Okay, training and SOPs documents, creating scripts and resources for the sellers. Okay, for the SDRs, creating training and proposal documents for the sellers and for the closers, just making sure that every sales rep we had, they weren't in the dark about what they needed to have. As you can see here, our SDRs and our set had everything they needed to get. They had the SDR flow, they had the SDR script. Okay, if they were triaging, they had the triage script right there. They had the content on how to revive stale leads. You can see the setter training, the SDR training, the closer training. We had everything there, and this is what we mainly created initially so that the setters exactly knew what they needed to do. Okay, screenshots of all of the documents, all of the SDR trainings again, all of the setter trainings. We've even got on flowcharts. So obviously, I'm not going to go into the script template, but everything that the setters needed, I documented, and me and the business worked together to make sure that no page was left unturned. No, whatever they're saying is, no page was left unturned or whatever. Created all of the documents so that instead of me having to regurgitate the same things every single day in case there was a new setter that came and we brought in a backup, instead of me having to get on tons of calls with them, creating new documents, just creating one SOP, creating one training stack, obviously continuously implementing that, continuously improving that. And it was so easy for us. We did all of the work in the beginning, and then moving forward, whenever we needed to fire reps. Still see me? Whenever we needed to hire and fire reps, all we had was the work from what we'd created initially, and all we literally had to do was send them an invite, send them the link to the Notion, send them the link to the Telegram, send them the link to the SOPs, and we were golden. We were good, okay? So that's what we did in regards to the sales. And obviously sales is it's a lot more complex than that, okay? Obviously I'm talking here about all of the scripts we created, all of the proposal documents, all of the setter training, all of the SDR training, all of the SOPs, etc. But you actually have to know about sales to be able to create these things, okay? If you don't know how to create the most effective script, if you don't know what's working in the market, if you haven't split tested, then how are you going to instruct your team? You know what I mean? So I was able to create all of this, and I have the XP to talk about all of this and talk about what we've done, because first of all, I've done it with this client, and second of all, I just knew sales. I'd been in sales. I was a setter, I was a closer, I'd managed boys before. It was so easy for me, but someone who's a business owner who's really good at content or really good at coaching, they're not necessarily going to have the knowledge, the infrastructure to create all of these resources, which is why this when I came in and worked with this business, it was so good, because I was a sales guy. They knew how to run their business. I was a sales guy. Everything worked perfectly. Okay, and then finally, for the sales, we've just got team calls and team training. Probably one of the most important parts too, because yeah, you can create all of the SOPs. Yeah, you can create all of the documents, right? You can create all of these things, and all of these things are good, but in the online space and anywhere really, the way you're going to get the most results, the way you're going to get the most out of your team is by consistent touch points with them, okay? And I'm talking about multiple calls a week. And you can use these calls for different things, okay? I used to use them for everything from team culture to training, okay? We'd train for the first bit, team culture for the second bit, we'd motivate for the first bit, train for the second bit, we'd review calls, we'd review conversations, we'd review DMs, we'd role play. We do all of these things in the team calls, in the team training. It was just a great environment, okay? This is where the boys thrived, and this was honestly where I was able to get the most out of the sales team, in the calls that we were doing. A lot of people underestimate calls. They're like, oh, I don't have time to calls. Oh, no, they could just watch the documents. Why do they need calls for? But honestly, that's probably why your sales team isn't performing as well as you want it to be. Okay. Once you've got these calls in place, once you're actually speaking to them on a consistent basis, once you're actually you're going through their things with them live on call, they're shadowing you, you're shadowing them, you're reviewing their calls, you're reviewing their sales calls. Okay. You could even be reviewing their sales calls while they're doing it. Once you're just using calls, you're using the ability to talk to each other like I'm speaking to you right now. Your ability to just improve the sales increases so much. Okay, so I'm always going to advocate for sales, and sales was a big thing on how we were really able to get some of the crazy results we did in the first 3 months. You know what I mean? 78K in the first 3 months through the team calls, through the SOPs, and through the infrastructures being created, like the team communications, booked calls, team hiring. That's done. That's it for the sales. Now we've got the closing, and closing is sales, but I like to see closing a little bit different. Okay, so like I said, I hired the setters, the closers, the SDRs. Sorry, I hired the setters and the SDRs. I also hired the closers too. Okay. Here are some of the results from the closers that I brought in. Here are some of the things that they were doing in their weeks training. First, 1 to 2 weeks. Here are some of the cash we were collecting. Some of the results we were able to see. Closing is a big part of the business. Like I said, it's very similar to setting. With this client, I myself was also closing a lot of their deals. So I was literally in the trenches with the closers myself, closing the deals, collecting the cash on the calls, showing them how it's done. And regards to training, it looks very similar, but also very different to when I was training the setter team. Again, when you're training closers, it's very, very, very different. With closers, you can't just give them a script. You can't just give them a resource and expect them to read from that and start closing deals straight away, start having a 50% closing rate. It doesn't work like that, okay? It works like that with setting, because with setting, you've got 5 minutes to reply. You can see the notification come through before you even open it. You can unread the message. So you've got time, you've got the ability to think, you've got the ability to even ask me, the setters, they could ask me, oh, how do I reply to this, bro? With closing, is very different. With closing, there's never, obviously you can get very similar situations, but there's never the same situation. Okay, so you can't just memorize one sales script or have one sales script and think, oh, okay, I know the sales script, I'm going to be able to close any call I want to. It does not work like that at all. You don't have 5 minutes to answer a question. You can't have a question asked to you on a closing call and be like, give me 5 minutes and let me just go and look at my script, or let me just go and ask David how I can answer this. You don't have that leeway. You know what I mean? When you're closing, you have to be fluid. You have to be smooth with it, okay? And that's kind of what we had to train. And that's why a lot of the closing training was done on calls. You can't really do a lot of closing training in the DMs. Obviously, it's possible. You can do it through DMs and through scripts. You can give them the resources. But a lot of it has to be done through team calls and also watching previous calls. Okay, so watching my sales calls, watching the business owner sales calls, exactly reviewing that, going through what was done correctly, what was done wrong, going through exactly what I want them to pick, to what I want them to notice from the calls that I sent them from either me or from the business owners. Okay, when I was training the closers, I had to have multiple touch points a week, because it's so much different. It's a whole different ball game to training a setter. Okay, when you're training a closer, we had to do things like call role play. Okay, we had to review their sales calls. Okay, we had to objection handle on the calls. It was very different compared to setting. Setting is something that you can get away with, just giving scripts or not having calls. But closing, you can't not have calls. You can't not do any in real live training, because the sales rep just won't succeed. The sales rep will not make any money, and your business will not make any money because they won't know what to do. You know what I mean? With closing, there's different approaches for different situations. Okay, there's different objections. Obviously, there's 9 times out of 10 with sales calls objections, you get 80% of very similar objections, and then you get 20%. But there's different forms of the same objection. There's different ways to handle. How you handle it for one person is going to be very different to how you handle it for one. So these are all things I kind of had to engineer into the closer myself. And these are all things that we went over when training. You know what I mean? Training a closer is something that if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know about sales, it can be very hard. It's something that it takes time. You can't just have 1 week of training a closer and all of a sudden they're at a 60-70% closing rate. It just doesn't work like that, okay? It definitely has to take some weeks. It has to take a lot of touch points. But once you're able to figure out, once you're able to crack it, your life is so much more easier. You know what I mean? I also love to use when we're training the closers. I also love to use the calls to get the closers out of ruts. Okay, so sometimes the closers when they were closing for OHB, sometimes the closers would be in ruts. You know, they'd have like a day or two where they haven't closed deals, and for a salesperson that can be very demoralizing. You know what I mean? You can really start to beat yourself up about that. You can really start to feel down. You can really start to lose confidence and lose motivation. That's another reason why I loved calls, because I was able to sense that, you know, in the calls, how is their energy? Are they low? Are they on a low frequency? If they're on a low frequency, I'm going to lift them up. You know what I mean? I'm going to motivate them. I'm going to get them out of a rut. We're going to go through what we need to go through. We're going to break down their sales call, kind of tell them exactly what they need to do to get out of that rut. And within 2 to 3 days, that rut is no more. Okay? So when you were closing, it was a lot of role play. We'd role play, you know, different parts of a call. We'd role play making sure that we're maintaining the frame, we're keeping the frame. We'd role play the beginning of a call, the middle of a call, the ending of a call. Okay. We'd have Zoom calls where we'd literally just go through their calls, like their sales calls. We'd go through all of them. We'd sit here for like 3 hours going through 3 sales calls. I'd have notes from obviously watching the sales call before, and I'd be stopping it, telling them what I liked, telling them what they should have done, telling them what they could improve. We'd even have calls objection handling, okay? So that's kind of the same point, but we'd role play objection handling. I'd give them an objection that they struggled to handle before, an objection that they didn't really know how to answer. And first of all, I'd let them attempt to handle it. Then I'd give them my feedback. I'd tell them, okay, you did this really well. This is what I do personally. And then I'd even give them the resources to go away and see how other people do it, okay? You see how with closing, it's very, very fluid. It's not one-dimensional. There's not one method fits all. It's kind of like what is appropriate is what we need to do, okay? And that's why I really enjoyed, and I really enjoy for my clients at the moment, I really enjoy closer training and closer management, because I just love it, honestly. It's one of those things where once you crack it, it's such a massive dopamine boost. It's such a massive reward, and it's such a great feedback loop. So that's closing. And then finally, we've got management, okay? So I've gone through the sales, I've gone through the closing. Now it's the management over all of these things. After building up the whole systems, after building up the set of teams, the SDR teams, the closer teams, after building up the proposals, documents, the training, it's time to manage it. You know, I mean, it's time to make sure that everything is running smoothly as soon as possible and as often as possible. Business, not everything is smooth all the time, but it's time to make sure that whenever things aren't smooth, I'm there to manage it, and I'm there to put out any fires, okay? My approach personally, and my approach for OHB when we were managing their team, 3 things: data, reviews, and calls. Right here, as you can see, calls is a big aspect of what I do. Okay, calls, a lot of it is done in calls, and it's so important. I'm going to go through each one of these points, each 3: data, tracking, reviews, and calls. I'm going to tell you why each of these things are so important, and why with each of these things, why we were able to see results with OHB. Okay, so we've got data tracking first of all. The great thing about data is that data doesn't lie. You can't argue with the data. Okay, there's no more valid argument. There's not a more valid argument than there is with data. You know what I mean? You cannot argue what has happened. You can't argue the trends. You can't argue the data, because what else are you going off? We're running a business, so we have to go off logic here. So we can't really be going off of emotion. We have to be going off logic, right? With the data, you can see exactly what is going wrong and exactly where things are falling off, okay? So if you track effectively, if you're tracking calls booked, if you're tracking the volume, if you're tracking the outreach, if you're tracking the conversions, if there is ever a problem, if the business isn't doing as well as you'd like it to, all you have to do is look at the data and you can see exactly where things are falling off, okay? if you're not making enough money, okay, let's look at the calls booked. How much calls are being booked? Okay. So there's about 20 calls. Let's go and look at the sort of outreach and see, okay, let's go and look at the volume. Can we actually increase the volume? Let's look at the capabilities of your volume we can actually send first. These are things I do. Can we increase the amount of volume being sent? Okay. Can we increase the amount of volume being done? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's increase that, and then hopefully, that should probably solve the calls being booked, right? Oh, okay. No, okay. There is a lot of volume. We can look at the volume here from the daily reports. Okay, there's a lot of volume. There's just not a lot of from the volume to the calls being booked. There's not a massive conversion. What's the problem with that? Is it the reply rate, or is it just the pitches? Either way, we've tracked both the reply rate and the pitches, so we can just go and see. Okay, which one is it? Is it the reply rate? Is it the pitch? Oh, okay. So it's the pitch. We've got tons of replies. We're just not pitching enough. Okay, let's start pitching more. Let's actually start pitching more. Oh, we've started pitching more. Oh, now we're booking tons of calls. Oh, okay. So literally through going through the data, we were able to go through every single aspect, see what was going wrong. Was it the pitching? Was it the replies? Was it the volume? We were able to pinpoint exactly where we were going wrong, improve that, see exactly how we can improve that on the calls. And it's no longer a problem anymore. Are not enough calls being closed? Oh, okay. Well, let's go and look at the closing rate. Okay, so the closing rate is 15. Sorry, the closing rate is 15. So we need to improve the closing rate. Okay, let's train the setter. Let's train the closer more. Let's ask the closer what are they really struggling with, because if the closing rate is this low, that means they're clearly not. Do they not understand the offer enough? Do they not have the right techniques? Are we not doing enough role play? How can we actually improve this closing rate? Oh, okay. The closing rate is still bad. Well, we've got documents. We've got call notes from every single call we've had from every single month. Every single call we've had, we've got notes on it, right? We've even got the call recordings. Okay. So let's go and see let's review the calls. Where have the leads fallen off? Are there multiple points in the call that they're falling off? Oh, perfect. Okay, let's train them on every single one of these aspects. Is there one massive objection that we're struggling to handle? Oh, okay, let's train this specific objection. You see how we've only been able to do that because we've tracked the data. We tracked the data, so we were able to know exactly what we need to fix. And the problem isn't a problem anymore, okay? So data tracking is a huge thing. Secondly, reviews, okay? Even when things are going well, even when things are going great, you still need to review, okay? And the great thing about reviewing, whether that's closing calls, DM conversations, SDR conversations, and I've got Go High Level here because that's what we're using, and Zoom. When you've got when you're reviewing all of these things, not only does it improve the team, but it also improves you because you're sharpening your tool. You know what I mean? You're constantly like when you teach things, it's not only the ability for your team to understand exactly how to do it, but it's also it's also a great opportunity for you because it's active recall. We're going back to school here, but you're actively recapping on the things, the core principles that you're teaching other people, right? So if you're teaching other people things, 9 times out of 10, if it's leaving your mouth, it's going to be entering your own brain too. Me right now, I'm recapping all of these things and I'm remembering tons of things too. You know what I mean? So reviewing calls, reviewing conversations, and reviewing everything is such an underrated tool which a lot of people don't use, because if there are any issues with your SDR, if you're reviewing their combos every day, you can nip any issues in the bud. Have they picked up any bad habits? Are they saying the wrong things? Are they explaining the service wrong? If you review these calls, if you review these conversations, you can nip that out, call them up, or just send them a text like, hey bro, don't say this, or this is not what you said, or this is how you say this better, this is how you frame it better. You know what I mean? You can sort out the issues, sort out any problems before they even become a problem. It also just allows you to give relevant feedback on actually what's being struggled with. So when you have these calls, which I'm about to go on, once you have these calls with your team, if you're reviewing everything, you can see what's actually the main issues. You can see what's being struggled with, and you can actually give tailored feedback. You can give tailored answers to them because you can see everything. You know what the main issue is. You know what's being struggled with, and you know exactly what needs to be fixed, okay? That just goes into data again. Reviewing is another form of data. What I did with OHB is I reviewed everything. I reviewed everything from their DMs to their calls, to their SDR calls. All of these things were reviewed. I knew what was going well. I knew what we needed to fix. I knew what was wrong, and I was able to make my next move based on that. Okay. Finally, we've got calls. Calls are a massive factor, and I've gone into a lot of that on this call. But calls are a super massive factor because we're working online. Okay, this is an online business, and these are online results. This is online money we were able to create, right? But the only problem about online is that you're not seeing your reps every day. Okay, you're not seeing them constantly in person, weekly, daily. Okay, so it's very hard to know how they're feeling if you don't speak to them. It's very hard to know, are they losing motivation? Are they losing confidence? Do they have that conviction? Okay. It's very hard to know all of these things, which is why the calls was amazing. Having calls not only to train but motivate your team is a massive factor. Okay, it's a massive part of running a successful online business, and a massive part of how we were able to get OHB crazy results is because not only were we able to train, we were also able to increase that team culture. We were also able to motivate. Okay, I was also able to resonate with the boys. I was also able to resonate with the team and just get the best results because everyone was on such a high frequency. I was able to join the calls. The boys could see I was bubbly. The boys could see I was smiley. The boys could see I was pushing them. We were motivating each other. We were incentivizing each other on these calls. It was a real in-person feel. You know what I mean? We're able to really build that relationship through calls. It's very hard to build a relationship with someone through text message. Okay. You'd have to do it so much, so consistently over a long amount of time. But really and truly, all it takes is all it takes is a couple calls with the boys. We already know each other now. Okay, we've been speaking for an hour multiple times a week, so we already feel like we know each other. We already feel like we've been friends for years, for months. So it's so easy to actually motivate the team. Team culture is something very big that I always go into in my videos, and that is a massive reason on why we were able to generate this amount of money with OHB within 3 months, just through the team culture. The boys were going into the calls, they were going into their DMs, they were going into their SDR and calls, ready to fight for me and ready to fight for the business every single day. Okay, I was motivating them. They could see I was working hard. I could see they were working hard too, and we were all just fighting for each other. We were all going to war with each other, and that is a massive, almost one of the most pivotal parts in how we were able to, see these results. I mean, 78K in 3 months through effective management, okay, through reviews, through calls, through data tracking, and those are only a few things, okay. There's so much that comes into data tracking. There's so much that comes into reviews, the right strategy. There's so much that comes into calls, okay, the right things that we're doing on calls. How are we motivating the team? How are we pushing them? How are we incentivizing them? You know what I mean? There's a lot, like, looking at it from the outside looking in, it seems very simple. You can watch this video like, oh, data tracking, reviews, and calls. Oh, role play, objection handling. Oh, team infrastructure building. Okay, but do you know the specifics of how you're actually going to do that? You know what I mean? Do you know what to cover in these calls? Do you know how to motivate the team so that they're constantly hitting KPIs and that they're constantly smashing results for your business? Do you know how to do this? I love this client. I love working with this client because honestly, it was such a great environment for every single person, including me, to grow. It was such a great environment for the team to grow. Okay, for the business to grow. We were able to get them such sick results. It was such a great environment for me as a manager to grow myself. Every time that I'm managing, every time that I've got a role with my existing clients, I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly improving my sales as well. You know what I mean? I've still got a mountain to climb up. I've still got so much to learn. But whenever I'm managing, whenever I'm doing this in real time, not theory, not doing it with a mentor, whenever I'm doing it in real time with my clients like I'm doing now and with, this client, it just, what I mean, there's just so much to learn, and it depends on what sort of mindset you've got. But I hope you guys have found this super useful. I hope you guys understand a little bit more about each specific aspect, exactly how I went about it, the specific protocols I had, the specific SOPs, the specific documents, and I hope it's given you some insight for when you're training your team, exactly how you can, get the most out of it, exactly how you can see results like this or even results better than this. As you guys know, I'm currently running a sales audit. Book book a link down below. Literally audit your business for free, audit your sales, see what you're doing right, see what you're doing wrong, see if there's anything we can fix, and also give you some insights, give you some more in-depth insights on some of the things that I was doing, with this client. I mean, even potentially even give you some of the resources that I created myself, give you some of the scripts, go through all of that and just make sure that, you're scaling your sales. See if it would make sense for us to work with each other. And if not, then I can always point you in the right direction, right? But hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, like, comment, any videos you guys want to see, DM me. A lot of you guys have been DMing me videos you want to see, some of the loyal content viewers. And yeah, I'll catch you guys soon. Take care.